to our podcast. Today I have with me Kevin Christopher. This is episode 37 and we are live. So welcome to the podcast. Thanks everyone for joining us. If you like this episode, please follow us at becomecgpro.com. Find out more about what we do as a school. But we have a couple of announcements at the beginning. I will just say that we have another podcast on January the 10th with Ryan Ziegler from Crystal Dynamics, and we have some more classes starting up in the new year. So follow us at becomecgpro.com. But back to the podcast. I'm just going to introduce our special guest for today. So Kevin Christopher is a post-production supervisor and solutions architect at Rite Media, who have a great facility over in Atlanta and a big LED volume. Kevin's had a really, really interesting history coming from architecture and engineering and film restoration into visual effects and post-production and virtual production, which is what he's focused on. Kevin, thank you very much for joining us today. It's great to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you. So, I'd love to start this off. Just kind of ask you a little bit about your path here, because it's a really interesting one. Everybody has a story and how they got to where they are. You have some quite unique moments in it. So, what was it that kind of led you down this path? What were some kind of early inspirations or experiences that pointed you in this direction?
Well, I mean, like everybody, I loved Star Wars. I loved movies. I love visual effects, but I thought I had to make a living. So I went and got a degree in architecture from Georgia Tech. And long about my junior year, I was working for the architecture department and as kind of a night manager for the computer lab. And they said, oh, well, here's a code to this room over here, and it's got this software. It's this new software called 3D Studio, and that was back in the DOS days. Go in there and learn this and see what you can do with it. And that just sort of sent me over the edge. I was hooked from the beginning. Started learning 3D Studio. Got out of college. Decided that what I wanted to do was do 3D visualizations for architects. I wasn't going to sit there on a drawing board all day. I was going to create something in the computer, and started doing that. And after about 6 months of bugging one of the dealers in town, they invited me in to start doing seminars for them. And the next thing I know, I was teaching 3D Studio and 3D design work. And all of a sudden, I had a business that was doing nothing but 3D visualization, which is where I thought I was, going to be for the longest time. And after that, other places started saying, "Hey, well, since you're doing this, can you do stuff more along the lines of media stuff? What TV broadcast? It's basically the same tools." And so I started doing more visual effects work in 3D and doing that. And from then on, it just kind of snowballed until I ended up at a place called Cinepost here in Atlanta, where they had a new department, and that new department was DVD authoring, and they needed somebody to generate menus and interactive stuff, which I had been doing for some of these presentations. And then I got the chance to learn about putting film back together, doing telecine work, doing color correction, eventually led to film restoration. And then as an editor and post-production supervisor. So it kind of just all snowballed out of this happenstance thing from my little night job at the university into a different kind of career for me.
So, what was it about the 3D tool and 3D Studio Max? I think it was similar for me in the beginning, although Maya, but 3D Studio Max was really the first one I started using properly. What was it about 3D that really spoke to you? What was so fun about it?
Just being able to immediately, create something and have it right there. I didn't have to wait to draw drawings and do construction documentation and wait for a building to come out of the ground. I could do it all in the computer and simulate it right there and be able to fly around and do all that. That was one of the things that just I was hooked at that point.
Right. Were there some kind of movies or things that involved special effects back then that drove any of the inspiration for you? Was it mainly the architecture in the beginning?
Well, I mean, like I said, just like everybody else in the industry, I loved Star Wars. I loved The
Yeah.
Empire Strikes Back. I loved all of that, that kind of stuff. And when I started in 3D, it wasn't just 3D Studio Max. It was actually 3D Studio DOS.
Right.
So, all the movie stuff was happening on the big, high-end computers. This was like the very first part of being able to do it on a computer that I could afford, and that was something that really inspired me. I was like, I can now do this um, on something that I can go and build myself and not have to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, although I did spend thousands of dollars,
Yeah.
but I didn't have to spend the kind of money that some of the bigger places were doing. So it it really allowed me to uh, sort of create this career for myself that um, otherwise would not have happened.
Right. Yeah, similar for me. Again, I think my at that point was really only runnable on an SGI, and those were hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the even the software was tens of thousands of dollars for a license. It was really inaccessible. So some of these things happening was make it some of it made it more accessible, more so you could experiment on it and get some time on the box. And I guess looking flash forwards to now where it's even better in a lot of ways. It must be. How does it feel now, kind of seeing Unreal Engine and Blender and things like that that are
Uh,
free even?
Blender being free has allowed us to really develop a new generation of 3D artists here at Rite.
Mm.
That's really helped propel us, and also Unreal Engine. Once we started getting into the real time Unreal Engine stuff, that really opened up a lot of different doors. Everything from previs. One of the things that we specialize here at Rite is high-speed cinematography, and we do high-speed cinematography with robotics. We have two robots that we use, and being able to previs all of that in Unreal is something that has really opened up a lot of avenues for us. We've done we've done high-speed photography on many high budget features, and that's been one of the things that has driven us into virtual production was that camera robot and high speed.
Right. Okay. So something that you guys are well known for. I'll definitely love to ask some questions about that. So, just taking a step back for a second, you mentioned film restoration. I'd love to, because that seems like something you're really into. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that involved?
Sure. I mean, film restoration can involve everything from correcting film damage to taking different elements from different reels and putting them together in order to create a full movie. One of the largest film restorations I worked on was for a 1950s Bob Hope movie with Katharine Hepburn called The Iron Petticoat. And we were able to actually go back and scan the original camera negative and then scan also the Technicolor 3 strip and put the movie back together based off of a telecine from Bob Hope's collection that he had. And
Oh,
it, it takes a lot of different disciplines in order to put that film restoration together. because we're either taking the camera negative, or we're taking a film print, or we're taking the Technicolor 3 strip, and we've got to make it all match and color correction and figure out which elements are actually the best and put it back together, and then correct any of the other imperfections along the way.
Is that going through that? How did that kind of influence the later parts of your career, the more recent parts where you got more involved in visual effects and post production and production and virtual production of new efforts? How did that kind of restoration project affect how you work?
Well, I mean, the restoration projects, um, one gave me this huge amount of organization skill that
Mm.
I didn't necessarily have. But what it also did was, as we were doing all these restorations for DVD and for rebroadcast on TCM, then it allowed me to look at a bunch of different films that I would not necessarily have watched, and learn about filmmaking, and be able to analyze films and lighting and things of that nature, which then further informed, how I approach the post-production process. And when I joined Rite Media, I joined Rite Media as a post-production person, and then once we started doing the robots, that's when I said, hey, we need to be able to take the data out of these robots and tie it to Unreal. And that's sort of what sparked the journey into virtual production, was because we had a robotic camera and it already knew where it was positionally in space. So we didn't have to do camera tracking. We didn't have to worry about where that data was coming from. The robot was absolute. It knew it had its own 0 point, and it could spit out the data perfectly in sync with what the robot was doing. So uh, our first goal was to, hey, can we get this data inside of Unreal and be able to use it? And the answer, of course, was yes, which started our development of the LiveLink plugin for the Mark Roberts motion control system.
So yeah, tell me a little bit about Rite Media and what your role is there.
Well, it's kind of funny. As the solutions architect, I'm the guy that is supposed to look at all of the different disciplines of Rite Media and determine how we're going to use these best to approach certain projects. And that may include robotics, it may include high speed, and definitely includes virtual production. So it's sort of what are our resources? How are we going to do this? And our goal always here at Rite is, how much of this can we get in camera without just doing a whole bunch of green screen and a whole bunch of blue screen? How much of it can we get in camera practically? We've always been about being able to trigger fire and explosions and different things and be able to catch those on the high speed camera. And that's kind of what we want to be able to do with virtual production. The latest production that we've worked on, we were controlling DMX lighting, we were controlling all kinds of environmental, all of that stuff being triggered via sequences in Unreal on the volume real time.
Right. Yeah. So you previous to that, previous to having the volume, you're doing mainly green screen kind of visual effects type work.
Yeah, we did a lot of green screen visual effects work. Again, when we're using the robot, we had the tracking information. We can do camera moves where we can shoot the same move over and over and over again. So we're able to create layered VFX plates, which makes it really convenient to doing certain effects, because you're able to then go into compositing with more than just one layer. You've got multiple layers and they all line up automatically.
Right. Yeah, going back to the kind of Star Wars days where I guess that emerged, and then doing it all optically, but as opposed to that, you're doing it digitally, but having that much more control because you have the robot.
Yeah, correct.
So, How do you, speaking about the robot, given that you guys use it so much, what what drives the motion of the robot? Do you like do handheld moves and mocap them and then play them back through the robot, or do you have animators animate them, or how does that work?
So it really depends. A lot of times we will get scans of a location. Someone will go in and do a LiDAR scan. We will then plan out the move uh, inside of Maya as an animation, and sometimes that's the appropriate method for doing it. Other times it's something like a stunt. If we're doing stunts with the robot, it's a little bit different, and we've got a couple of tools in our basket. One of which is using an iPad to actually mimic a camera, and we have it on a system where we can move the iPad around, and that data is then translated into the robot. And we never drive the robot directly with any of these tools. It's just kind of a safety thing. So we'll take that data, send it over to the robot. It will analyze it and make sure that it can produce those moves safely. And if we have to, we can tweak them a bit. And then we're able to repeat that move over and over again. So we can get both the ultra smooth, animatable path for the robot camera, or we can get the more handheld. It just really depends on what the shot calls for.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Making sure that it's the right type of shot for storytelling, story being the driver. Yeah. So what mentioned the safety aspect, is that something that, I guess, because the robot uh, is not necessarily like the Terminator, it's not going to come alive and go after you, but something along those lines, that you got to make sure that the move isn't going to be dangerous for the robot or the crew.
Well, I mean, what we want to do is we want to make sure that, because the robot is big and it can knock things over.
Mm.
We want to make sure that what we're doing, the move that we're creating, is done in a safe manner. It's, both aesthetically pleasing to the eye for the kind of move it is, but also, safe for everybody else. So we don't use something that drives the robot live. We will perform these moves with our tools, and then import that into the robot so that we can evaluate it and make sure that everything is going as planned. It's one of those things where you don't want it to do anything unpredictable, so you
Mm.
don't want to lose communication with it. So having a wireless, gimbal or something to manipulate the robot is not a good idea. So we just try to do it as safely as possible.
That makes sense. Excuse me. And do you in figuring out whether it's safe, does it have kind of like its own diagnostics for the move, or does it just try it and then
No,
find out by doing?
oh no, it definitely has its own diagnostics. There's an entire kinematics model about how the robot can move and how fast it can move in each direction, and whether or not the moves can be accomplished with, the mechanical arm. So uh, it doesn't become a safety thing at that point. It becomes is this possible with the IK model that is built into the robot, and can we produce this move at this speed, without creating camera shutter.
Got it. So do you presumably have to run it through while you're recording the motion, just to check it in case you have to go re-record the move if it doesn't work?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we bring it in. It immediately tells us, hey, that's not going to work, or it will work, and then we can run the moves. And the nice thing about the software is it's much like any other animation software. You can take the splines and you can tweak the splines and you can adjust everything and smooth out any of the places that are just too rough or don't seem to work out really well. Sometimes when you're trying to go from point A to point B, there's uh, the curve. You get used to be in Illustrator, too many knots in the curve, you get too many points in the curve, and it gets a little on the jerky side. So you just can go in and delete those points out and smooth out the curve and move on.
Right. Yeah. Do you do you, I guess, kind of know after using it for a while what things it's likely to be able to do and not do, and kind of like be able to advise the operator or the person animating or whatever, say, oh, that's just not going to work, don't try it, or like, well, I guess maybe the question would be what's it good for and what's it not in terms of robot.
It's really good for a lot of things. I mean, we've used it for everything. For example, they had a shot in one of the shows here that was shot here in Atlanta, where they did this car running around the streets, and they then took that in and camera tracked it and created a camera solve, and then exported that path, and then wanted the robot to do exactly that same move. And we were able to um, actually sort of cheat it by changing exactly how fast the robot moves versus how fast the arm moves, and create this shot where they then composited the actor standing on top of the roof of the car. And that's one way of using it. So you're creating a shot where it would not be safe for someone to be standing on top of a car as it's riding through the streets of a downtown. And and we were able to achieve that with the robot by using those techniques.
Do you actually have the robot mounted on the car?
No, 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 no. The robot was not even used until later on. So they
Oh, I
just
see.
took the plates that they shot and then camera tracked it, and then brought that camera track solution into Maya. Then we took our robot model inside of Maya and hooked that camera up to it, and we were able to create the same camera move, and then we could recreate it on a sound stage.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, are you typically using it in the sound stage in the volume? Do you ever take it out on the road?
Oh yeah, it goes on the road. We can load the thing on a truck and be anywhere with it, and set up fairly quickly. I mean, we can set it up once we land at a location in about 2 hours, and then
Oh,
we're ready to start blocking shots and planning everything out. Or we've already planned it, and we can just load the move in and show the director immediately. Okay, here's the move, and of course the first thing they say is, "Can it go faster?
I'm sure.
Can we make it go faster?"
And I'm sure your answer is a bit
There's
sometimes.
the our operator Colin Quinn is a master at the software, so he knows how to tune it and make it go faster, or at least make it seem like it's going faster by changing the way you angle the camera and how you can move the camera versus moving the arm itself on the track. So there are always ways to make things look like they're going faster.
Yeah. Um, so how do you prepare for this, presuming that you do quite a lot of tech viz and previs for operating this thing?
Yeah, we do a fair amount of it. Sometimes there's a lot of pre-planning. Visual effects supervisors will come in and say, "Here's the camera move I want," and they'll have already done it in Maya, and we'll say, "Okay, well, here's the camera move that you think you want." And then a lot of times we're doing all of the planning. Somebody says, "Well, I know I want a robotic shot, but I'm not exactly sure how we're going to make this work," and we'll actually do all of the shot planning and blocking prior to going on set. And that's where the lidar scans come into play heavily.
What tools do you typically use for that kind of visualization or pre-planning?
I mean, we're using almost everything. So whether or not we're using a Faro or one of the other scanners, we're always looking at different things. I mean, we've even used reality capture to capture some scenes in order to be able to pre-plan some of the shots.
Right. And software-wise, visualization-wise, what 3D tools?
Well, the 3D tools that we use the most, at least for the robot is concerned, is going to always be in Maya. Our simulation software that has the built-in kinematics model and knows exactly how fast each part of the robot can move is all built on a tool inside of Maya. So that's always going to happen inside of Maya, and then once it's ready to go back out to be used, we're in the special software for the robot called Flare.
Okay. Remind me the name of the robot again, or like the make and
It's
model.
a Mark Roberts motion control, and it's
Right.
what we have is a Bolt, and then we
Right.
also have a Bolt Junior Plus, which is his smaller sibling.
Got it. Does it have a name, like a pet name, a nickname?
This one doesn't have a nickname. Our first robot had a nickname. We rescued our first robot from putting together Hummers. It was going to be thrown out, and we rescued the robot. It cost us more to transport it than it did to buy it, and it was called Rocco. So this one we just have Bolt and Mr. Junior over here.
Got it. Did something happen to the first one?
Well, I mean, it ran its course. So when we got it, it's one of those things where you're taking a piece of technology that was meant to do one thing and you want to do something completely different with it. And it had the ability to make the moves and make them fast and make them smooth, but it ran on Windows 95.
Enough said.
And at some
Okay.
point, it just stopped.
Right.
And there was nothing we can do about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely understand. Yeah. Well, Windows 95, some way. Weirdly, a few years ago, I found myself back in a project where the only piece of software that we could use to resurrect some data was only runnable on Windows 95, and we had to try and make a machine work on Windows 95, whatever, 15 years after the fact, and
Oh yeah,
it didn't really
more than
work,
15
so we
years
gave
after
up.
the fact.
Right. Yeah. No, it's it's interesting. And I guess well, thinking back to the Star Wars thing and having finally finished watching the Light and Magic documentary series about the start of that company and really the start of visual effects for all of us. It was really interesting seeing basically them, I'm sure, going through the same thing of figuring out how to use technology that was meant for something else to do something different in film.
Oh yeah, the Dijkstra Flex. You
Yeah.
know, when I watched that, the first thing I did was come into the office and said, "Okay, everybody here has to watch Light and Magic." And it's just this is who we are, but on a completely different level and in a completely different time. They were doing the same things that we're doing now, but back in the late 70s. So everybody needs to watch this and understand exactly why we're taking all these disciplines and throwing them at virtual production. What we're trying to do here with virtual production.
Right. Yeah, it was interesting in that series sort of coming towards the end of it where it went through the today's stuff had John Favreau on there and talking about volumes and Mandalorian very quickly. It was mainly about the previous
Oh,
inventions, but yeah.
oh yeah, that's when we started saying, okay, well, let's take the robot and let's start doing virtual production. That was one of the first things that we did when we started looking at, okay, we got to get this data out of the robot. We're going to find somebody who can help us in Unreal. And so we just put a little note out on one of the Unreal sites and said, hey, can anybody in Atlanta that can help us with this? And we got this guy to come through, and he talked about it. He goes, yeah, I think I can help you out. Turned out he worked for Profile and had worked on the camera tracking for the first season for The Mandalorian, and he knew exactly how to get our data from the robot into Unreal, and that just started us down this path. The first piece that we put out, which was the Unreal Life, was us doing a robotic camera move in virtual production and duplicating the same character over, and that's really where we started with this. And the nice thing about using the robot with virtual production, when we have these things where we've got to do the same camera move over and over again, we know it's exactly going to be frame locked, and we're not going to have any problems with anything matching. And it allows us to do that. And it also allows us to, as a tool, one of the things you fight in virtual production is the lag that happens between the camera tracking and the LED wall, because by the time you get through with the camera tracking, you may have a frame and a half of lag. You go through Unreal, you may have another 2 frames of lag. You hit the LED processors, and that definitely gives you 2 frames of lag. So you're about 6 frames behind by the time the camera sees what the move that you've made. And with the robot, what we're able to do is tell it, hey, start sending the data and delay the move. We can tell it to delay the move, and that way we can get rid of any lag that we might have.
Interesting. Is that based on just a known lag amount?
It's based on a known lag amount. It's something that you can almost easily quantify by taking a look at the time code that's coming out of the camera and piping it through Unreal, and then looking at the time code on the wall, and you can see the difference. And that difference is that lag that you're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, makes sense. So how do you like how much of your time is R&D versus being actual production?
Right now, it's a lot more R&D than it is production. It's probably about 70-30 R&D versus production. As we're ramping up into next year, it's going to be mostly production. The R&D time has ended, and it's mostly going to be about production. We have a stable working volume now, and it's just about, okay, let's take a look at the assets we're given. Let's see what the VAT has given us, and going through and optimizing that to play on the volume, and then taking a look at all the shots and working with the director and the DP to finalize what we're actually going to shoot on the volume.
So you have like times where there's a bit less production work going on, and you're able to schedule in your R&D then, and have like a list of things that you want to bring to future productions, and is that kind of how you do it?
Yeah, that's how we approach it. We approach it, at least on the first part of the build for our volume, and this is, I think, the 5th wall that we've built.
Right.
So we approach it as R&D heavy up front. What is it that we're trying to accomplish? Like, for example, in this build, our goal is 120 frames per second, and we want to be able to shoot that on there. And we've done our testing. We know what we can hit. We know how hard we have to push, and we now have this stable volume that we can now just say, okay, let's go and just shoot project after project on it. It's the same kind of approach that we took last year on our last volume.
Right. Do you have an amount of kind of R&D time per production? Do you kind of factor that in, knowing that there's, I don't know, unknown unknowns going into most projects?
Yeah, there's always, I like to have ramp up time to any production, and sometimes I'm given 30 days ramp up time, and sometimes I'm given a week. And if we're in a week, we're really just shooting in a known situation. We know that, okay, we're not going to do anything special from this. We're running 24 frames per second, and that's all that we're doing. We don't have any triggerable events. We don't have any of that kind of stuff. We're just shooting. Other times we've got things where we really have to R&D it. If we've got triggerable events, if we've got repeatable things that have to be able to be synced, that takes a little bit of R&D to make sure that that's always going to work on the volume.
Right. So someone's working with you guys, they should know that if they want to do something new that hasn't been done before, more prep time. Factor in some more prep
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah, you know, if it's not something that you haven't seen before, then it's going to take more prep time to do that. And that's you know, with any kind of shooting, you're going to find that on any feature film. If you're doing something that hasn't been done before, then it's going to take a lot more prep time to sort of iron the bugs out of everything.
Right. And what types of work are more common in the volume for you guys?
Well, I mean, the things that have been sort of our go-to things, especially when we're ramping up on something like this, is we always like to take and use music videos as our sort of ramp up on the volume. So we can go in and test out new things in a low stakes situation by doing music videos, and that's where we've really learned a lot of different ways and techniques of using this. And then once we're pretty comfortable with that, then we move on to doing commercials and things of that nature. And we've shot a couple of short films and other projects like that. And we're firmly moving into series now.
Right. And features?
Oh yeah, we'll if a feature would like to book the stage, sure, come on in. We'll book the stage. But we've been doing robotic and high speed camera work on features for the last 4 years, 5 years.
Right. Somebody's asking what type of camera tracking systems you use or prefer to use it with an LED stage.
Okay, so this is called the bucket of camera tracking, because we have used actually almost every camera tracking system out there. We have in-house right now Red Spy system, and the Red Spy is working on an inside-out camera tracking. We've also used Vicon, which I like a lot, and we have Vanishing Point. And then we've also used the MOSES. And I think that, you know, the MOSES virtual stars are something that's going to be a really nice feature where you don't have to have the stars put up all over the place or on the floor. You can just turn them on the wall and they never show up in camera.
Oh, interesting. Now, how does that work?
So one of the features of a Brompton is that you can take the same frame and send it to the LED tile in a multiplier. So what you do is you put the multiplier up to 4, and then you tell the stars to be on, say, frame 4 of the 4 times multiplier, and the picture to be on the 3 frames before. And so it blinks on the wall, and the camera tracking picks that up, but you never see it because the camera is syncing with the wall. It's syncing on that first frame.
Right. And how many frames per second do you need to accomplish that?
Well, we've been doing it at 96 frames per second on the wall.
Right. And you're pushing for 120.
We're pushing for 120. If we were doing 120, we would not be doing the virtual stars. We would be actually using, you know, the regular old star field in either the Red Spy or the MOSES system.
Okay. What's the reason if you're at a higher frame rate?
Because then if we're doing higher frame rate, then we can't do the flicker frame. So
Right.
you have to have all 120 frames per second if you're doing higher frame rate. So you can't use
Right.
the virtual star tracking.
Got it. And yeah, what's the desire for the high frame rate? Because
So when you're shooting a lot of tabletop stuff, which is another sort of arm of our business, we do a lot of tabletop because of the robot. You're always shooting somewhere close to 100 frames per second. So we want to be able to do 120 frames per second so that we can accomplish some of these shots that would normally require either a build or a location shot, and be able to do them inside the volume in a more controlled environment. And that way we cut down on company moves. You don't have a day of tabletop versus a day of in store or on location shooting for commercials.
okay, so that's kind of allows you to have less transitions, less time setup time between different types of projects.
Correct.
Um, somebody asking another question: how do we get a tour?
Oh, all you do is just send me an email and or a message, and we can tour you anytime. That's the great thing about our volume, is that this volume is not locked down on an NDA, and you can call up and say, I need, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, and we just put it in the schedule and put it in for booking, and so we can give a tour anytime.
Fantastic. Well, whoever asked that question, there you go. There's your answer. Sounds pretty easy.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Um, what's your favorite part of all of this? There's lots of different techniques going on here.
What's my favorite part of it?
Yeah,
I
or
mean,
like your favorite thing to do in virtual production, or
well, my favorite, I mean, my real favorite thing to do is shoot day. That's
mm,
that's my favorite part. That's where I like to be, because that shows off the fruits of everybody's labor. We're able to come together as a team, and everybody can see, what's going on. I love it when somebody finally gets it when they're in virtual production, and they come in and they're looking at the wall, and they're real confused about this frustum that's moving around and what's going on. And I go, just look at the monitor. And they look at the monitor and they go, how does that work? How is that possible? And it's when you can really get people to go, wow, how does that work? And really tricks them into believing that they're, in a location. That's what I really enjoy. That's where I go, now we've finally done our job right.
right? So you like freaking people out with the magic trick. I love it. Yeah,
It's voodoo. Sometimes it's voodoo.
it is a magic trick. Yeah. Um, how do you speaking of, people coming in that state where they maybe haven't done it before, they're not used to it, they maybe have some excitement, some fear, some uncertainty. How do you like to prepare people to come into using this way of making movies?
Well, I mean, we like to bring them in and allow them to sort of play with the technology first. And that's one of the things that we've been doing with this volume. Once we got this one up and running, is that we've been inviting people in, directors, DPs, other people to come in and actually play. And we just finished a project that we just shot that was really just allowing gaffers and DPs to work on the volume and create something that, otherwise they would not have been able to do, and learn about how the technology works and what we can do with it and how far we can push it.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's the way we get people over those fears. And once they get bitten by doing it with this method, they're really sold on it.
Yeah, so learn by experience, by doing, by showing them. um I know that you've done a lot of work with with helping get the imagery on the wall as well, and working with nDisplay. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works and how your journey's
Yeah,
been with nDisplay?
this this is one of those things. nDisplay is part engineering, part math, and part construction. So it really pulls on my experience uh, in the architecture realm, whereas I actually have to design something that can be built in real life on the stage, and it also has to function as a method for transmitting our visual information here. So it's really about taking that information in and saying, okay, how big of a space do we have? How many pixels are we going to produce? How many computers are we going to need? How are we going to break this down into 50 centimeter by 50 centimeter tiles and be able to lay this out and get what we're looking for? And so we've done a lot of different things. We've done a lot of configurations for volumes. And one of the things that I've done is actually work on a really large nDisplay with a disguise system for an experiential space. And that space used 32 nodes to do the nDisplay, to drive the nDisplay. So they can get quite large, or they can be as easy as, a single node for tabletop work. There's always some kind of design consideration. What does the shot call for? And how many pixels are we going to have to produce, and at how far from the camera?
Are you able to say which project it was?
Oh yeah, so yeah, it's the Illuminarium. They have a location in Atlanta, and they have one in Las Vegas.
For anyone who doesn't know what it is, can you describe it?
Sure, it's an experience center where they're doing projection mapping, and not only are they doing just projection mapping and playback, but there's also a component of Unreal where there's interactive uh, real-time content being generated on the floors and the walls, and a LiDAR system that allows you to interact with it. And that's one of the biggest things is we were able to take in the LiDAR data and translate that data into something that that Unreal can read, and then you're able to actually interact with the real-time generated objects, whether it be flying nebula in space, or boot prints on the moon, to playing with flowers in the Georgia O'Keeffe example. Uh, just lots of different things that you can accomplish with Unreal that's along the same lines as virtual production, but meant for people to be able to enjoy, as opposed to it being a method for filming.
Right, there's an experiential as opposed to just consuming linear media. It's really cool that the same tech that drives both, and that you're able to create all sorts of different stuff now using the same tools.
Yeah, we were actually able to expand Unreal in UE427, so that nDisplay had an alpha channel, which is something that nDisplay was never meant to have an alpha channel, because it's always meant to be the backplate. So we were able to expand it to create an alpha channel, and then be able to overlay that onto other graphics. So we had interactive graphics being generated in Unreal, being overlaid on top of playback graphics
Oh,
inside
cool.
this. Yeah, so in the Georgia O'Keeffe exhibit, you're able to walk through and experience her flowers, and then also have a particle system that's on the floor. And as you walk through, this vortex of flower petals form around you as you move through the space. And you're able to do that. And you're also able to create paint strokes and all kinds of different things.
Very cool. That sounds really fun.
Oh, it's
Um,
a lot of fun.
I know that you're also a passionate filmmaker yourself, and you often have made and worked on independent movies. Can you tell us anything about that side of what you do?
Sure. I mean, this is one of those things that, you feel like you have to have a project that you're running from beginning to end. And so for the last, I don't know, almost 20 years, I have, picked an independent film that I've worked on in some capacity or another, either as the lead editor or as a visual effects person or as the colorist. I've even dabbled in the sound department, trying to keep my skills moving, in the film business, all along, always trying to achieve something new or something different. And so I continue to do different kinds of independent films. We'll pick one out and start doing, something on that, whether it's we're just doing development. We're always constantly developing stories, film scripts, things of that nature. Some of them get shot, some of them get sold, things like that.
As, and yeah, any notable ones that you can say that you've shot in the volume?
No, we haven't shot any notable ones in the volume. We did shoot a short film last year that'll be coming out for, I believe, South by Southwest this year, and it's called Under the Infinite, and it was
Right.
all shot in the volume. It's a interesting story, and it's centered in a crop circle, and it all happens at magic hour. And the great thing about having a volume is that you can have magic hour all day long. And that one of the things I said is okay, I'm going to give them magic hour, but how many days are they going to shoot magic hour? And that was for 4 days. They shot magic hour, 10 hours a day. They just, oh, we can get this shot. Oh, look at this. We can get that shot. So if you give it, they will take it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of the interesting things I think about this and being able to play in filmmaking, where previously it was a bit more prescriptive. You'd have to figure it all out first and then just make that and not deviate from the plan. Whereas now we're in this kind of state where you can do things like that. How much has that affected filmmaking for you in terms of the creative and the discovery phase?
Well, one of the things that it's done for us is it's allowed us a, a great deal of freedom when it comes to things like magic hour. So, for example, if it's we don't have to rely on what's out in nature. We can adjust things, and we can get more fanciful, and we can get something just a little bit different. And if the sun is not exactly in the right spot, we can just move it. We can adjust it. When you're shooting on a volume, a lot of times, uh, like what I'm sitting on now, it's really just it's not a full circle. So we can take and we can move the world around, and we can play tricks by moving objects and changing up things. So it's really opened up a great deal of freedom in blocking when
Yeah,
it comes to shooting.
more experimenting. Um, I got a few more questions here that have come in. What has there's a lot of talk of AI or machine learning more accurately at the moment. Is there any parts of your process where that's actually making a difference?
Uh, Not yet. There's a great deal of experimenting going on in AI around here.
Mm.
Uh, most most prevalently is the fact that one of our guys has Stable Diffusion running on one of the machines and is constantly making AI pictures of everybody in the office. Uh,
That's the best use case I think I've heard of so far.
so there's a lot of that going on, and there's been a lot of it's been a way of creating a jumping off point for some from creatively. So
Mhm.
we can get in and we can mess with the AI and get sort of a creative jumping off point for certain things. And we've done that on a couple of projects where we're bringing those through the development pipeline right now. And then we've got some techniques that we're working on, which I think is going to be very interesting, especially when it comes to creating three-dimensional depth mats and being able to take imagery and plates and create something that can be used for virtual production, but is not a complete world build. So it's a combination of doing stuff with NERF and 3D depth maps that looks like very promising for being able to do some of the standard backplate shooting that you would on a volume without having to do everything by hand.
Right. But no AI camera moves on the robot, because that wouldn't be a good idea.
Well, the last thing we want to do is give the AI a robot to play with.
Absolutely. You got to keep the AI in a separate room from the robot so it doesn't get any ideas.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about in terms of changes in the industry at the moment, or anything that you're kind of researching at the moment that you're really, really keen on?
Well, I mean, I'm really keen on a couple of different things right now that we've got cooking in the background. And that has to do with expanded photogrammetry that really captures all of the information that, standard photogrammetry is missing with cross polarization. And that's something that I'm really excited about. We're able to see some of the objects that we've done testing on and really get a sort of a new dimension into the lighting and relighting of that object inside of Unreal. And so that looks really promising for the future. Everybody's really hot on NERF. But what I've found is so far is that NERF is not the be all end all when it comes to creating 3D geometry for the volume. The fidelity is not quite there yet. So there's a bit of maturity that needs to happen there. So some of the standard expanding on some of the standard photogrammetry is really looking promising as far as object creation and object capture for virtual production.
You seen Avatar yet?
No, I have not seen Avatar yet. It's one of those things. It was on the list this weekend, but my kids are just now coming back from college and after their first semester, so they didn't want to go see Avatar.
Right. Well, then I won't ask you anything about it. It just sprung to mind because there was some 48 frame stuff in there, which I know has been played around with a bit over the years, but yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah, it's funny, for all of the high speed stuff that we do, we're always looking at things, or we're shooting that high speed stuff to be played back at 24 frames per second. We're never really shooting it to be played back at 60, a la Peter Jackson, or 48, like they did with Avatar on some of that stuff. And I don't know that is going to change immediately. The whole, everybody's sort of idea of what persistence of vision means and how it's supposed to look is sort of, kind of wired in our brain. And a lot of people don't like the 48 or 60 frame look for playback.
Yeah, it definitely has a different look. There's sort of uncomfortableness to it, but in some ways, I think in that movie, in places, that's probably the intention was to create that kind of feeling. So if it's like used aesthetically as a conscious choice, then maybe it can fit. But yeah, we've stuck on 24 for a long time for a reason. Yeah, anything that you want to share with our listeners? Any websites or links or things that people can follow you on?
Sure. I mean, you guys can check out Rite Media, RITE Media.com, and see any of the movies and stuff that we've worked on. It's everything from Guardians of the Galaxy to I, Tonya on there, for for high-speed filming. And then take a look on some of the Mark Roberts motion control stuff, and you'll see a lot of our show reels, which you can take a look on our website and see our show reels, and see the kind of visual effects work that we've done with the robotic camera. And look for our short, our Christmas short coming out here at the end of the week on Thursday. It's called The Future Is Now, and we'll be putting that out on Thursday.
Well, please share it with us too, and we'll happily send it on through our channels as well.
Yeah, no problem.
Fantastic. Well, Kevin, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you very much for being a part of this. It's great to hang out with you again, and yeah, for sharing your wisdom with our listeners.
All right, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
You bet. Yeah, thank you also to all our listeners today. Thanks for showing up and listening and participating and asking great questions. You can catch us again. This will be our last one for 2022. So a very happy holidays from CG Pro. And if you can see us, if you're just listening, then you can't see us. But if you can see us, you'll see Kevin's spectacular background with his Christmas tree. So from all of us, including Kevin, very happy holidays, and we will look forward to seeing you all in 2023. We'll be back with our next episode on January 10th with senior technical designer from Crystal Dynamics. It's Ryan Zingler, and we have a games class which is coming up in February, so that's a precursor to that. If you're interested in training in Unreal Engine, please do let us know, and you can follow us at becomecgpro.com. Again, big thanks to our guest today, Kevin. Thank you. Thanks to everybody. Have a very happy holidays and get some rest. Make some goals for 23. Let's go. I will see you all next year. Take care, everybody.